somebody get after you, Gene? The nose?
I got in a fight with shoulder pad.
Gene, have you ever had a penalty? An unsportsmanlike penalty as a defensive coordinator?
Absolutely not. Never. I don't plan on it anytime soon. That's exactly why they put me up there, yes.
It would be a challenge for you.
Yes, if I got one up there, it would be pretty egregious.
At the third quarter you guys played the other night, just what did you do differently in the third quarter defensively, maybe from what you had seen in the first half to stop?
Really, a lot of times adjustments in the second half are twofold. Sometimes you have to change some things. Sometimes you have to go in and you have to just really kind of settle down into what you're seeing and adjust how you're playing things a little bit better. Saturday night was more of the second one, where we had to go. At that point, we'd kind of seen what they were trying to do, how they were trying to attack us. So we didn't really change any calls. It was more of identifying what they were doing that was hurting us. So our kids are, as I've said before, our kids are very smart when it comes to understanding what's happening and how to fix it. So it was more of us just saying, hey, look, here's what they're doing. This is how we have to make sure that we're adjusting to it. And they did a good job of that in the third quarter.
Have you found that with an older, more mature team, as Mac has said, that it's easier to make those adjustments, that they're more, I guess, pliable to those adjustments than a younger defense would be?
Definitely, definitely. As we know, experience is everything. And so when you have a lot of experienced guys, most of the adjustments that occur usually happen between the linebacker and the secondary guys. And if you look at those positions, which is the second and third level of our defense, you've got some guys that have played a lot of football. And I've said repeatedly that, just being the second year in the system with so many different things that offenses can do to you, they're at a much more comfortable spot. So they really understand those things, and they do a good job of adjusting.
Speaking on the linebackers in the secondary, through 6 games this year, you guys had 9 interceptions. Last year, the whole season, you guys had 9 picks. Obviously, the addition of Jason Jones over the offseason, but what do you feel like is different in this year's back end maybe from last season?
I think, again, a comfort level with what we're trying to accomplish. I think communication has been better. There were times Saturday night where it was not good, and it led to some explosive plays that we're not happy about. But just in the grand scheme of things, guys more confident where they can play the ball in the air. There's, I call it the power of proximity, right? Like when you put yourself in positions to make those plays, you have to produce. So I think a lot of times we're in better proximity to make those plays as well, right? We're putting ourselves in a better position to make those, and then we're doing a better job this year of making the plays on the ball when we have those opportunities, which, as you know, they're few and far between, right? When the ball goes up, if you're in a proximity to get it, you have to take it. So I think we're doing a better job. We're not there yet, but we're doing a better job of playing the ball in the air.
In baseball, home plate umpires a lot of times have their own little interpretation of the strike zone. Do you find that officiating crews in football are a little bit like that as well? And did you maybe deal with that a little bit the other night, where maybe some things were flagged that might not always be flagged?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, so I'll have to be very careful on my answer. But I feel like there were some things that we have to go back and really teach our guys that, these things sometimes could get called, these things sometimes may not get called, but be very careful with how you finish plays. Be very careful with, in the midst of a play, we had a couple penalties that had been called, all year on us as a defender, and they were the right calls. And we just got to coach our guys on when we get into these positions with our hands or wherever we are, that we're conscientious of not getting a penalty, but in the same sense, making sure we don't make our guys, passive, in the same sense. And there's a fine line in there, right? The penalties to us defensively that we really stress and strain and are not okay with are your pre and post snap ones. Like there's absolutely no excuse for that. Those are penalties of undiscipline and penalties of focus when it's pre or post snap. While the plays are going on, things happen. Guys are fighting and clawing and scratching to do their job. And so we understand that at times, but still we have to be very conscientious of coaching our guys that when we get into these positions, we have to try to figure out how to not get that penalty.
Like hitters have to adjust a little bit. Do you ever have to adjust because of the way maybe some early calls go, or do you just play the game the way the game's played and they're going to call it the way they call it?
No, we play it the way we're not going to adjust. We're not going to be thinking about that, ever. We're going to play the way we play. And again, you can't be so worried about that it's taken away the aggression of what you're trying to get done. But again, as coaches, you have to coach these scenarios when they happen. Again, what we're trying to, really, stop is the pre and post snap, which we had some pre-snap penalties the other night that were very disappointing. But no, we're going to just be conscientious of them, but we're not going to slow down, and we got to go play.
Surprised at all that Kevin Esther came back as fast as he did. Mac was saying that he thought it was going to be about 3 or 4 weeks. He only missed the one game. Were you surprised that he came back?
I was. I really was. And I'm really proud of him. He had been, his ankle was tough earlier in the week. And so it was really 50-50, maybe less, maybe 40-60 in our minds. But for him to be able to go in there and play most of the game like he did, and gut through that because it was still somewhat bothersome to him, but he wanted to play, and he's a competitor, and he's gonna. If there's any way he can get on the field, he's gonna get on the field, and he did that. So we were really happy that he was able to play.
Was that a game time decision? Like, did they decide on Saturday that he was going to play rather than?
No, it really looked better. It didn't look good early in the week, and it's really amazing with these young athletes, right? Like, in a span of 24 to 48 hours, it can go from one thing to the next, meaning it doesn't look good, and then all of a sudden 48 hours it does look good, and especially with those injuries, right? Ankle injuries, and there's certain injuries out there that it sometimes does become a game time decision. But what he was able to do is he was able to practice more as the week went on, because generally speaking, if they're not practicing, we don't feel like they're going to be ready to play. So they have to get some practice time in there, and that's a big deal for Mac, and that's a big deal for me as well. Like, we don't believe in players not practicing all week and then just getting in the game and being fine and being productive. And he was able to wean himself back into practice as the week as the week unfolded. So, but again, you don't know how they're going to feel near the end of the week, but he did a great job.
Gene, how are you guys balancing having enough bodies in those pass rush lanes, but also having coverage in the secondary? Because they only rush for 91 yards, but they almost pass for 400.
Yeah, it was. So we need to take a great look at that, because we're doing a better job stopping the run. We were very inconsistent with stopping the pass game, and so there were some disappointing things collectively as a defense that we have to fix. To your point, the first one is pass rush lanes, making sure that we balance up the pass rush lanes and we do a better job of that. There were several times the other night when, the secondary and the linebackers had to cover for, 5 to 6 seconds, and that's unacceptable. And so it doesn't matter what, it's a 3-man rush, 4-man rush, 5-man rush, lanes always have to be balanced out. And so we were very inconsistent in that. And then if you combine some secondary miscommunications and things of that nature that were in conjunction with that, our pass defense was poor. So it was not up to the standard of anything that we feel like we need to, put on film. And Miami had very good players. They had really, really good wideouts. The quarterback was really good. He was tough. He took some hits and kept bouncing back. But that was a product of us versus us when it was a pass rush lane issue. When it's a communication issue in the back end, that's us versus us. So we spent a lot of time yesterday correcting that, and because it was not acceptable.
When you're prepping for a team that's played 2 quarterbacks this year, both meaningful times. Do you scout both of them, or do you focus more on one who appears to be the current starter? I guess, what do you balance out when you're trying to prepare for the team?
Well, it's interesting because these guys have played almost equal, right? The other one got hurt, and then the other one played 3 games, I think, and then the other one came back. So we will definitely focus on both of them because quarterbacks have different strengths and weaknesses. What they have done with either one of them in the game, though, is continue to run the same offense. It's changed very little for what each quarterback does, but each quarterback has different skill sets. So we study both of those.
You mentioned the communication issues. It hasn't seemed like it's been a thing all year, but it showed up against Miami. What have you seen on film or talking to your guys that sort of created those issues? Was it just the fact that Miami's got good players, or is there something they were doing to create those for you guys?
No, there was nothing they were doing that should have created those issues. Those issues, again, that was an us problem, and starting with me. So we've addressed it. Very fixable. When the moments get really big, you have to deliver. And there's a lot of big moments the other night we didn't deliver in. We should have played a much cleaner football game. And so we pointed that out yesterday. Everybody's on board, and nobody was exempt. It wasn't a DB linebacker problem. It wasn't a D-line linebacker problem. It was a collectively an 11 people doing my 1/11th problem. And so what we pointed out yesterday was that 10 guys can be great. That's all good. But if your 1/11th is off, then it costs us yards and points and first downs and all those other things, field position. So we were very inconsistent for the first time in a few weeks in a huge game, and that's unacceptable. So we will work to get that straight this week and just try to improve.
Max said that the fumble you guys forced early that Seth ended up recovering the end zone, he said Bo Atkinson got a hand on it. The way we saw it looked like Jahvari Ritzy's right leg. Is that what y'all saw on film?
It was wadded up in there, and so it was hard to see exactly who did what. I think the bigger point is that in times like that, it's really interesting because when you get down to the goal line and you're that close to the goal line, we always reinforce the fact that this is where you have to play. This is where you have to get stops. This is where you have to get the ball out, whatever it takes down there. Because a lot of times it's a foregone conclusion to a lot of people that it's when you're on the 1 yard line, they're going to score. Let's go ahead and kick it off and let's get our ball back to our offense. So it was a combination of guys digging in there. Bo was definitely in there. Ritzy was definitely part of the deal as well. I guess, again, the bigger point is just the fact that we did get it out, and it was a red zone stop, right? So that was huge.
What did you feel about Ritzy's maybe activity level or energy? I mean, he made some plays. I know they got him on the hands to the face, I think, was one of the penalties, which I know is possibly questionable. But just his activity level and energy and off. He barely played against Syracuse because he got dinged up. Like, what did you think about that?
Yes, it was good to have him back. Again, it's been interesting because we've been dinged up a little bit here and there at different positions. You'd mentioned, we just talked about Hester. Ritzy's kind of been the same way, right? Just had some dings here and there. But it was good to get him back and get him, significant snaps. And he is showing up. And for us to be able to be what we want to be, guys like him have to be able to be a consistent part of the rotation, which he is, certainly when he's healthy. And he's definitely in our pass rush packages as well. But it's good to have him back, and he's heading towards being really, really healthy now. But we count on him for significant snaps every week.
Andrew.
Very quickly, Miles Murphy, what's been the difference the last 2 weeks with him?
I feel like he's really doing a good job of striking blocks, staying in his gap, finishing plays. I think finishing probably would be the best word for him. We have been able to, again, keep our rep count down with him. And when we're able to do that, he can finish, His finished product is better when his rep count is low. But I really like his pad level. He's starting to really come into his own right now and knocking blockers back, playing in the backfield. That's happened the last couple of weeks. We know he's had the power and the strike ability to do that, but now he's doing it more consistent. And he's really playing hard. He's chasing the football. You see him around the ball. One time we didn't have our pass rush lanes balanced up right. The quarterback spit it out, and then you could see him chase him down. So he's playing better. The last 2 weeks he's definitely played better, and we expect that from him moving forward. And we hope that it's a confidence builder for him as well.
All right.
Thanks, guys.